Here's something about divine deaths. They're never accidents. Not really. When a god decides to leave a body behind, the whole universe holds its breath. And when that god is Krishna, the butter thief, the flute player, the one who showed Arjuna the spinning heart of infinity, the world doesn't just hold its breath, it forgets how to breathe at all. Before we begin, like and subscribe if you truly enjoy this. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and the time. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan, and let's ease into tonight's journey. You're standing on a palace balcony in Hastinapura. The marble is cool under your feet, even though the afternoon sun still hangs heavy over the Gangetic plain. 36 years have passed since the Great War ended. 36 years since the arrows stopped flying over Kurukshetra. 36 years since the victory drums fell silent and the Pandavas claimed their throne. You'd think 36 years of peace would feel like a blessing. It doesn't. The air tastes wrong, not rotten, just still and suffocating, like a room left sealed for lifetimes, or fruit that appears flawless but bruises beneath the thumb. Servants shuffle through corridors, eyes lowered as if ashamed. Priests drone mantras that die on their tongues. Even the temple bells sound like they're begging to be silenced. Yudhishthira sits on the throne below you, the Dharma king, the righteous one, the man who gambled away his wife and kingdom, who won it back stained in blood. His hair is white as morning ash. His shoulders sag beneath invisible burdens heavier than his gold ornaments. He rules justly. He rules wisely. He rules like a man dreading thunder on a silent night. Because something is wrong with the world. Everyone feels it, but no one dares to say that the kingdom's peace is unraveling, haunted by decay and uncertainty. The rains came late last year. They came early the year before. Rivers that flowed east for 1,000 generations have begun to curve south. Cows give milk that curdles before it reaches the pot. Children are born with teeth already in their mouths. The astrologers have stopped making predictions altogether. They just shake their heads and mutter about inauspicious alignments. And then there's the silence from Dwaraka, Krishna's golden city, the impossible kingdom built on an island in the western sea, the place where the Yadava clan rules in splendor, where Krishna himself walks the streets, where everything is supposed to be perfect forever. The messengers stopped coming 3 years ago. At first, no one noticed. Krishna was busy. The Yadavas had their own affairs. Dwaraka was far away, and the roads were long, and surely everything was fine. Surely the dark-skinned god who had saved them all 100 times was just occupied with other matters. Surely he would visit soon. He didn't visit. Arjuna paces the corridors at night. You can hear his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. He doesn't sleep well anymore. None of them do. Bhima has stopped laughing at his own jokes. Nakula spends hours staring at maps of the western coast. Sahadeva, the one who sees the future, has started drinking wine at breakfast. Nobody asks Sahadeva what he sees. They can't bear the taste of the truth he must swallow every morning. You lean against the balcony railing and look west. Somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond the forests and the rivers and the mountains, Dwaraka sits on its island. Somewhere out there, Krishna exists, or existed, or no, don't think about that. The thing about peace is that it's supposed to feel like relief. Victory is supposed to taste sweet. The Pandavas fought the war to end all wars. They defeated their cousins, claimed their birthright, and established Dharma across the land. They did everything right. So why does the kingdom feel like a held breath, as if some invisible conflict lurks beneath the surface, ready to shatter the fragile peace? Why do the palace walls seem thinner than they used to? Why does every sunset look like a warning? The war killed millions. The battlefield at Kurukshetra drank so deeply that season, they say the soil is still dark. 18 armies walked onto that plain. A handful of survivors walked off. The Pandavas won, but victory has a price, and the bill always comes due. Somewhere in a palace in Hastinapura, an old king dreams of a friend who vanished. A friend who once swept through doors unannounced, stole butter with the ease of breathing, played his flute until possibility shimmered in every shadow. A friend who is now only an ache in memory. Somewhere on an island in the western sea, that friend watches his kingdom crumble, heart splintered with every ripple of decay. And somewhere in the space between them, a curse is ripening. A hunter is sharpening his arrows. A death is being prepared, not with malice, not with planning, but with the terrible patience of things that were always going to happen. Tonight, we're going to witness how a god dies. Not in battle, not in glory, not surrounded by weeping devotees and heavenly trumpets. In a forest, alone, mistaken for a deer. The greatest death in the Mahabharata isn't a warrior's death. It's quieter than that, stranger, more human, and somehow more divine. But first, we need to understand how the world got here, how the golden city fell, how the Yadavas destroyed themselves, how a joke became a curse, and a curse became iron, and iron became reeds on a beach where brothers would soon strike each other down. The story of Krishna's death doesn't start with an arrow. It starts with a blindfolded queen standing in a field of corpses. It starts with a mother's grief. It starts with words spoken in ash and fury. It starts 36 years before the end, in the smoking aftermath of the war, when Gandhari finally removed her blindfold and saw what victory had cost her. Close your eyes now. Feel the weight of 3 decades pressing down on this moment. The world is waiting for something to break. It's about to. 36 years. That's how long the curse waited. That's how long Krishna carried it. But to understand the weight, you have to go back to where it was placed. Back to the field, back to the ash, back to the moment when a mother's grief became something that could outlast empires. The war has been over for 18 days. You're standing at the edge of Kurukshetra, and the smell hits you first. Burning flesh, sandalwood, trying and failing to mask it. The thick, sweet rot of bodies the pyres haven't reached yet. Smoke rises in columns across the plain. So many columns they look like a forest of grey trees growing toward a sky that refuses to rain. The ground is soft under your feet. Don't look down. You don't want to know why. Somewhere in the distance, elephants are being led away from the carnage. Their handlers speak to them in low, soothing voices, but the animals keep turning back, confused. They remember the sounds, the trumpeting of their own kind as they fell, the screaming that didn't sound human because much of it wasn't. The Pandavas have won. This is what victory looks like. She's walking through the field now. You see her before you understand who she is. A figure in white, moving slowly between the bodies, attendants trailing behind her at a respectful distance. Her hair is loose, grey-streaked, tangled with ash. Her hands shake as she reaches down to touch faces she can no longer recognize. Gandhari, queen of the Kauravas, mother of 100 sons. For decades, she wore a blindfold. When she married the blind king Dhritarashtra, she covered her own eyes in solidarity, or protest, or penance, depending on who tells the story. She chose to live in darkness because her husband had no choice. She raised 100 children without ever seeing their faces. Now the blindfold is gone. Now she sees everything. You're close enough to watch her find them, one by one. Duryodhana, her firstborn, the one who started this war, his body broken, his thighs shattered by Bhima's mace. Dushasana, who dragged Draupadi by her hair, what's left of him barely fills a funeral shroud. The others, the ones whose names history barely remembers, scattered across the field like seeds that will never grow. 100 sons, 100 pyres, 100 times. She kneels in the ash and touches what remains. The sound she makes isn't crying. It's something older, rawer than crying. It rises from a place where grief has burned away sorrow and emerged hard, splintered, a thing with edges. Her attendants try to guide her away. She shakes them off. She isn't finished. She's looking for someone. Krishna arrives in the late afternoon. His chariot is clean, impossibly clean, given what it's driven through. The horses are calm. His robes are immaculate, deep yellow against the grey landscape. And somehow, this makes everything worse. He looks like he's arriving at a festival. He looks like he's about to smile. Gandhari sees him from across the field. She stops walking. Her hands, which have been trembling for hours, go still. You can feel the moment the air changes. The attendants step back. Even the smoke seems to pause, the columns bending slightly, as if leaning in to listen. She walks toward him. He waits. When she reaches him, she doesn't bow. Queens don't bow to princes, even divine ones. But this isn't about protocol. This is about something that's been building for 18 days, for 13 years of exile, for a lifetime of darkness she chose, and a war she couldn't prevent. She speaks, and her voice carries across the silent field. She tells him she knows what he did. She tells him he could have stopped this, all of it, with a word. He could have counseled peace, truly counseled it, instead of playing both sides like pieces on a game board. He could have saved her sons, even the wicked ones, even Duryodhana with his jealousy, and Dushasana with his cruelty. They were young once. They were children once. They could have been guided instead of goaded. But he chose war. He chose to let the Pandavas fight. He chose to watch 1,000,000 men fall so that Dharma could be restored. As if Dharma required this much blood. As if righteousness demanded 100 funeral pyres burning at once. She tells him she knows he's a god. She tells him she doesn't care. The curse comes out of her like something physical. You can almost see it leave her body. A darkness that doesn't have shape, but has weight, has presence, has intention. She tells him that his own people will destroy themselves. The Yadavas, his beloved clan, will turn on each other in madness and violence. They will fall not to enemies, but to themselves. Dwaraka, his golden city, will sink beneath the waves, and Krishna himself will die alone, unmourned, in a forest somewhere, brought down not by a warrior's blade, but by something small and stupid and meaningless. 36 years from now, she says, that's when the bill comes due. The words hang in the ash-thick air. The attendants are frozen. Even the pyres seem to burn lower, as if the flames themselves are listening. And Krishna smiles, not a triumphant smile, not a cruel one, something sadder than that, something that looks almost like relief. He accepts the curse, not with argument, not with divine intervention, not with any of the thousand powers at his disposal. He simply nods, as if she's told him something he already knew, as if she's confirmed an appointment he'd been waiting for. He tells her she's right. He could have stopped the war. He chose not to. He tells her the reasons, the restoration of Dharma, the cleansing of Adharma, the cosmic necessity of what had to happen. But even as he speaks, the words sound hollow. They sound like excuses dressed up as theology. He tells her he accepts her curse, willingly, completely. Then he turns and walks back to his chariot. You're watching him go, and something about the set of his shoulders tells you everything. This isn't a god shrugging off a mortal's anger. This is a man who has just been handed his death sentence and is carrying it away like a package he'll open later. The smile didn't reach his eyes. You noticed that. The acceptance was real, but so was something else. Something that looked almost like gratitude, like he'd been waiting for permission to stop. 36 years. That's how long he has left. That's how long Dwaraka has left. That's how long the Yadavas have left, though they don't know it yet. They're probably celebrating right now, somewhere on that island city, raising cups to the Pandava victory, toasting a future they don't realize is already written. The sun is setting over Kurukshetra. The pyres burn brighter as the light fades. Gandhari is still standing where Krishna left her, a figure in white against the orange and grey. Her eyes finally open to a world she probably wishes she couldn't see. She's given him his death. He's taken it like a gift, and somewhere, 36 years in the future, a hunter named Jara is being born, or learning to track deer, or sharpening an arrow that doesn't know yet what it's for. The curse is patient. The curse can wait. But first, a city has to fall. People have to forget who they are. A joke has to be made, and a mace has to be born, and iron has to become reeds on a beach. The destruction of the Yadavas won't come from outside. It never does. The worst endings are always the ones we build ourselves, one small cruelty at a time, one forgotten prayer, one moment of arrogance that seems harmless until it isn't. Dwaraka is still standing tonight, golden and proud and impossibly beautiful. It won't last. Nothing does. The city rises from the sea like a dream someone forgot to wake from. Dwaraka, the golden city, Krishna's city, built on an island because the mainland couldn't contain it, couldn't hold the sheer ambition of what the Yadavas wanted to create. Towers of white marble catch the morning light, temples with spires that seem to pierce the clouds, gardens that bloom year-round because the gardeners have mastered arts that lesser kingdoms have forgotten. Ships from every corner of the known world crowd the harbors, bringing silk and spices and stories of how there's no place on earth quite like this one. You're walking through the main gate now, 35 years after Kurukshetra. The curse is 1 year old. The city doesn't know it's dying. The first thing you notice is the scent. Salt air mixed with jasmine, with incense from 100 temples, with something else underneath, something slightly off, like fruit that's been left in the sun too long. The streets are still paved with stones that gleam like they're polished daily. The buildings still tower overhead, intricate carvings of gods and heroes decorating every surface. But look closer. Look at the cracks in the mortar. Look at the weeds pushing through the perfect pavement. Look at the temple steps, where the morning offerings sit untouched because the priests haven't bothered to collect them. A widow approaches a merchant's stall, counting copper coins with trembling fingers. She needs grain, just enough for the week. The merchant weighs her coins, weighs the grain, and somehow the scales tip in his favor. She doesn't argue. She takes her half portion and shuffles away. The merchant watches her go with eyes that used to be kind, probably. Eyes that used to belong to someone who would have been ashamed of what he just did. He's not ashamed anymore. That's the thing about rot. It starts so small, you don't even notice. You follow Krishna through the market district. He walks slowly, like he's memorizing every face, every voice, every small betrayal. People used to stop what they were doing when he passed. They used to bow, touch his feet, and ask for blessings. Now they glance up, nod vaguely, and go back to their haggling. A few don't even bother with the nod. He's still the same. Dark skin, the peacock feather, the smile that used to light up entire battlefields. But something has shifted in the city's relationship with its God King. They've grown comfortable, comfortable enough to forget, comfortable enough to assume he'll always be there, always fix things, always make the hard choices so they don't have to. Two brothers are shouting at each other outside a goldsmith's shop. Their father died last month, and now they're fighting over his workshop, his tools, his customers. The younger one shoves the older one. The older one shoves back. Neither of them notices Krishna standing 10 feet away, watching. He could stop this. One word from him, and they'd fall at each other's feet, weeping, reconciled. He says nothing. The temple district smells like old wine and older regrets. You can hear the priests before you see them. Loud voices, louder laughter, the kind of sounds that don't belong in sacred spaces. They're gathered in the courtyard of the main temple, passing a jug between them. Their robes are stained. Their mantras, when they bother to chant them, are slurred and half-remembered. One of them sees Krishna approaching and has the grace to look embarrassed for about 3 seconds. Then he takes another drink and turns back to his friends. The sacred cows wander the streets untended. Their ribs show through their hides. Children throw stones at them, not to hurt exactly, but not gently either, just because they can, just because no one stops them. One cow has a gash on her flank that's been left to fester. She limps past Krishna, and he reaches out to touch her head. And for a moment, something like grief flickers across his face. The children don't even notice. They're already looking for new targets. You're in the warriors' quarter now. This is where the Yadava princes live, the sons and grandsons and great-grandsons of the heroes who built this city. They swagger through the streets in armor they've never bloodied, carrying weapons they've never earned. Swords that were gifts from fathers who actually fought, bows they can barely string. They tell stories about Kurukshetra as if they were there, as if they did something other than stay home and wait for news. The real warriors, the ones who remember what blood smells like, who still wake up screaming from dreams of the battlefield, they stay inside mostly. They don't like what the city has become. They don't like watching boys play at being men. One of the young princes is demonstrating his archery to a group of admirers. He's aiming at a painted target across the courtyard. His form is terrible. His arrow goes wide, nearly hits a servant, and everyone laughs like it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. The servant doesn't laugh. The servant knows better than to complain. Krishna watches from the shadows of a colonnade. His own son, Samba, is somewhere in that crowd of princes, handsome, charming, absolutely convinced that the world owes him something. The sun is setting now, painting the white towers gold and orange and red. From a distance, Dwaraka still looks like paradise. From a distance, you can't see the cracks. You're standing on a balcony overlooking the harbor, and the salt wind is cool on your face, and somewhere below, a woman is crying because her husband hit her again, and no one cares. Somewhere below, a beggar is dying in an alley because the physicians who used to treat the poor for free have decided their skills are worth more. Somewhere below, a boy is stealing from a temple donation box, and the priests are too drunk to notice. And even if they noticed, they probably wouldn't care. This is what the curse looks like. Not fire from the sky, not armies at the gates. Just this, a city forgetting, one day at a time, what it was supposed to be. Krishna walks the streets at night now, alone. The peacock feather catches the lamplight. His footsteps echo on stones that once rang with prayers. He passes a house where a father is beating his son for some minor disobedience. He passes a corner where young men are gambling away fortunes that grandfathers bled for. He passes a temple where the eternal flame has gone out because no one remembered to tend it. He could fix all of it. He could speak and they would listen. He could remind them who they are, who they were supposed to become. He could tell them about the curse, warn them that their time is running out, shake them awake before it's too late. He says nothing. Maybe he knows it wouldn't help. Maybe he knows that people who need to be reminded of their own souls have already lost them. Maybe he's just tired. 35 years of watching, of waiting, of knowing exactly how this ends. Or maybe this is what the curse requires. Not just destruction, but complicity. Not just death, but deserving. The Yadavas aren't being destroyed. They're destroying themselves. Every cheated widow, every drunken priest, every stone thrown at a sacred cow. These are the building blocks of their own ending. The curse gave them 36 years, but they're not using that time to become better. They're using it to become worse, as if some part of them knows, deep down, that the end is coming, and they've decided to deserve it. Dwaraka is still beautiful. The towers still shine. The gardens still bloom. But the city is hollow now, a shell of what it was, and the sea that surrounds it is patient, so patient, waiting for the day when it can finally reclaim what was built on borrowed time. Krishna returns to his palace as the stars come out. The halls are quiet. His wives are sleeping. His children are scattered across the city, living lives he can see but no longer shape. He stands at a window, looking out at his kingdom, and the weight of 36 years sits on his shoulders like armor he can never take off. Gandhari's voice echoes in his memory. You could have stopped this. Yes, he could have. He didn't. And now he's watching the consequences unfold, one small cruelty at a time, one forgotten prayer at a time, one crack in the foundation at a time. The curse isn't patient because it has to be. The curse is patient because it knows the Yadavas will do most of the work themselves. Tomorrow, a group of princes will get bored. They'll decide to play a joke on some visiting sages. They'll dress up Samba, Krishna's own son, as a pregnant woman, and they'll ask the holy men to predict what kind of child she'll bear. It will seem harmless. It will seem funny. It will be the end of everything. The festival of destruction began, as all festivals do, with drinking. But this particular morning, the wine hasn't been poured yet. The sun is barely up, and a group of Yadava princes is gathered in one of Dwaraka's pleasure gardens, restless with the particular boredom that comes from having everything and deserving nothing. You're there, in the shade of a mango tree, watching them. Samba, Krishna's son by Jambavati, lounges on silk cushions. Sarana sits beside him, picking at a plate of sweets he's already tired of. A dozen others sprawl across the garden, young men with jeweled earrings and soft hands that have never held a plow, never strung a bow in earnest, never done anything harder than deciding which courtesan to visit. The air smells of jasmine and overripe fruit. Somewhere, a peacock screams. Samba is handsome in the way that sons of gods are often handsome, almost too perfect, like a statue someone forgot to give flaws. He has his father's dark skin, his father's easy smile, but where Krishna's smile holds the weight of the universe, Samba's holds nothing at all. He's bored. They're all bored. Boredom is the disease of the privileged, and these princes are terminal with it. Someone mentions that sages have arrived in the city. Vishvamitra, Kanwa, Narada himself, the wanderer between worlds. They've come to pay respects, to offer blessings, to do whatever it is that holy men do when they visit golden cities. The princes exchange glances. You can feel the idea forming before anyone speaks it. That particular electricity that comes before young men do something stupid. Someone suggests they have some fun with the visitors. The plan is simple, in the way that cruelty often disguises itself as simplicity. They'll dress Samba as a pregnant woman. They'll approach the sages with exaggerated reverence, ask them to use their divine sight, and beg them to reveal whether the child will be a boy or a girl. It's a joke, just a joke. The kind of thing bored princes do when they've forgotten that actions have consequences, that words have weight, that the universe is always listening. Samba agrees immediately. He thinks it's hilarious. The others scramble to find women's clothing, silk wraps and jewelry, padding for his belly. They work with the focused energy of children, building something they'll regret. You watch them transform Krishna's son into a mockery of motherhood. The padding bunches awkwardly under the sari. The jewelry sits wrong on his masculine frame. But they're not trying for convincing, they're trying for funny. The peacock screams again. No one is listening. The sages are resting in the guest quarters near the temple, where the incense burns perpetually, and the marble floors stay cool even in the afternoon heat. Vishvamitra sits in meditation, his face carved by decades of penance. Kanwa reviews sacred texts, his fingers tracing words that were old when Dwaraka was young. Narada strums his veena softly, humming to himself, his eyes holding that particular knowing that comes from walking between worlds. These are not men to trifle with. These are not men who miss jokes, who overlook disrespect, who let insults pass without response. Their blessings have built kingdoms. Their curses have ended them. The princes don't know this, or rather, they know it the way children know fire is hot, as an abstract fact that doesn't apply to them. Not really, not today. You're there when they approach. Feel the cool marble under your feet. Smell the sandalwood smoke. Hear the soft music of Narada's veena falter and stop. The princes enter with Samba in the middle, veiled and waddling, his fake belly leading the way. They're trying not to laugh. They're failing. Sarana speaks first, his voice dripping with false reverence. He explains that this woman, this poor, expectant mother, desperately needs to know the nature of her child. Will the holy ones consent to use their divine vision? Will they bless her with knowledge of what grows within? The sages look up. There's a moment, you can feel it, when everything hangs in balance, when the universe goes completely still, when the princes could still bow and apologize and beg forgiveness and perhaps, escape what's coming. Vishwamitra's eyes move from face to face. He sees the suppressed smiles, the trembling shoulders, the way Samba's hand keeps moving to adjust his padding. He sees everything. Kanwa sets down his texts slowly, deliberately, the way a man sets down a weapon before reaching for a bigger one. Narada stops strumming entirely. His famous smile, the one that's witnessed the rise and fall of ages, flattens into something else entirely. The princes don't notice. They're too busy not laughing. When Vishwamitra speaks, his voice is quiet. That's the terrifying part. Not thunder, not rage, just quiet. Certain words falling like stones into still water. He tells them that this woman will indeed give birth. She will deliver an iron club, and that club will be the instrument of their entire race's destruction. Everyone gathered here, everyone in this city, everyone who shares Yadava blood, all of them will perish. Only Krishna and Balarama will be spared from this particular doom, for they carry their own endings within them. The words hang in the incense-thick air. The princes have stopped trying not to laugh. They've stopped breathing. Samba's hand goes to his padded belly, an instinctive gesture, suddenly horrible. The sages return to their meditations as if nothing has happened. Narada picks up his veena, finds his melody again. Kanwa opens his texts. Vishwamitra closes his eyes. The princes stumble out into the sunlight, their joke curdling in their throats. They tear off Samba's disguise with hands that won't stop shaking. The silken jewelry fall to the marble floor like shed skin. Someone suggests the sages were bluffing. Someone else agrees too quickly. They separate, return to their own quarters, and try to forget what they heard. They don't sleep well that night, neither do you. The next morning, Samba wakes screaming. The servants find him clutching his stomach, his face grey with terror. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And then, in a moment that defies everything the body should be capable of, he delivers exactly what the sages promised. A mace of black iron, heavy and cold, emerges from his belly like a nightmare given form. It clatters to the floor with a sound that echoes through the entire palace. The servants flee. Samba stares at the thing he's birthed, this impossible weapon, this death of his entire people made manifest. The mace just lies there, black and patient, waiting. Word reaches King Ugrasena within the hour. The old king, who has seen so much, who has survived so much, looks at the iron club and understands immediately what it means. He gives orders, grind it into powder, every last fragment, use the strongest men, the heaviest hammers, reduce it to dust so fine it can never be reassembled. The smiths work for days. The mace resists as if it knows its purpose and resents the interference. But eventually, finally, it becomes powder, black and glittering, like ground-up night. Ugrasena gives more orders. Take the powder to the sea, scatter it in the waves. Let the ocean swallow this curse, dilute it, dissolve it, carry it so far from Dwaraka that it can never return. The servants obey. They wade into the surf and release handfuls of black dust into the water. The waves accept it eagerly. Within moments, the powder is gone, dispersed, invisible. Ugrasena watches from the shore. He allows himself to hope. But iron doesn't disappear. Iron transforms. The powder settles on the seabed. It mixes with sand and salt and whatever ancient things sleep in the deep. And slowly, impossibly, it grows. Within weeks, new reeds appear along the shoreline near Dwaraka, tall and sharp-edged, swaying in the ocean breeze. They look like ordinary marsh grass. They feel like ordinary marsh grass. They are not ordinary marsh grass. They are the mace, reborn, scattered, multiplied, waiting in plain sight. Every reed contains a fragment of the curse, a sliver of the destruction that was promised. The princes walk past them without noticing. Children play among them. Fishermen brush against them while launching their boats. No one connects the new growth to the powder in the sea. No one realizes that the curse they tried to destroy has simply changed form, spreading itself along every beach, every inlet, every shoreline of their golden city. The reeds sway in the evening wind, patient, ready. In a few months, during a festival at the beach, someone will grab a handful of them in anger. Someone will discover that these innocent-looking plants become weapons in a clenched fist, iron hard and sharp as any blade. But that's later. For now, the sun sets over Dwaraka. The princes try to forget their joke. King Ugrasena tries to believe the crisis has passed. The reeds grow thicker along the shore, and somewhere in his palace, Krishna looks out at the sea and sees exactly what's growing there, exactly what's waiting, exactly how the end will come. He says nothing. He's been saying nothing for 36 years. The beach at Prabhasa stretches white and endless under a sky that hasn't decided whether to rain. The sand burns beneath your feet. Salt hangs thick in the air, coating your lips, your skin, the inside of your throat. Somewhere behind you, the sound of drums and laughter rises from the festival grounds where the Yadavas have gathered. All of them, every prince, every warrior, every noble family, they've come for a holy pilgrimage, a purification ritual, a chance to wash away the strange dread that's been settling over Dwaraka like monsoon fog. They've brought enough wine to drown a kingdom. You're standing at the edge of the celebration, watching the Yadava nobility spread across the shoreline like a tapestry of silk and gold. Pavilions snap in the ocean breeze. Cooking fires send up columns of smoke that smell of roasting meat and clarified butter. Musicians compete with the crash of waves. Dancers move between the crowds, their ankle bells adding another layer to the chaos. Looks like joy. It sounds like joy. It tastes like the last meal before an execution. The wine flows from vessels that never seem to empty. Servants move through the crowd with pitchers, refilling cups before anyone has to ask. The afternoon heat makes everyone thirsty. The thirst makes everyone drink. The drinking makes everyone honest. That's the problem with wine. It doesn't create anything new. It just removes the walls that keep old things buried. And the Yadavas have buried so much. You notice the first argument, the way you'd notice a single cloud in a clear sky. Two men near one of the cooking fires voices rising just slightly above the general noise. Nothing unusual. Festivals always have their small conflicts. But then you see who's arguing. Satyaki, the great warrior who fought beside the Pandavas at Kurukshetra, who single-handedly carved a path through the Kaurava army to reach Arjuna. His face is flushed, not just from wine, but from something older, something that's been fermenting for 36 years. Across from him stands Kritavarma, another hero, another veteran of the Great War. But Kritavarma fought on the other side, and he did things during the final night of battle that no one has forgotten. The smell of grilled fish mixes with the sharper scent of sweat and anger. You can feel the temperature around these two men rising, even as the ocean breeze tries to cool everything down. Someone mentions the war. Someone always mentions the war. Kritavarma's voice cuts through the festival noise, loud enough that nearby conversations stop. He's talking about the night raid, the massacre of the sleeping Pandava camp. His tone suggests he's proud of it. His tone suggests Satyaki should remember whose side won that particular engagement. Satyaki's response comes fast and sharp. He reminds everyone within earshot exactly what Kritavarma did that night, how he stood guard while Ashwatthama crept through tents and ended the lives of sleeping warriors, of boys barely old enough to hold swords, of men who'd already surrendered to dreams. The words hang in the salt air like something physical. More people are listening now. More people are remembering. The wine has loosened tongues throughout the crowd, and suddenly everyone has something to say about the war, about who did what, about which side was really right, about old debts that were never paid. You can feel it spreading, the anger, the blame. 36 years of pretending to be one people, one family, one kingdom. All of it starting to crack. Pradyumna steps in to defend Satyaki. He's Krishna's son, which should carry weight. His voice is steady as he calls Kritavarma a coward who slaughtered children in their sleep. But Kritavarma has his defenders too. Voices rise from his side of the gathering, reminding everyone of Satyaki's own brutality, his own choices, the bodies he left scattered across Kurukshetra's mud. The music has stopped. The dancers have retreated. Even the servants with their wine pitchers have frozen, watching the two groups of men drift toward each other like storm fronts. The sand beneath your feet feels suddenly unstable. The crash of waves sounds less like rhythm and more like warning. Someone shoves someone else. A cup of wine spills across silk ropes. An insult becomes a challenge. And Satyaki, his hand trembling with decades of suppressed rage, reaches down and grabs a fistful of the reeds growing at the waterline. The moment his fingers close around those innocent-looking stalks, something changes. The reeds stiffen, harden. What was marsh grass becomes iron, the same iron that was once a mace, that was once a curse, that was ground to powder and thrown into the sea. Satyaki doesn't even seem to notice the transformation. He's too angry. He swings the handful of reeds at Kritavarma's head with all the force of 36 years of hatred. The sound it makes when it connects is not the sound grass makes. Kritavarma falls. The festival goes silent, just for a moment, just long enough for everyone to process what they've witnessed. A great warrior struck down by a handful of weeds. Then someone else reaches for the reeds. You're watching the end of a civilization unfold in real time. The transformation spreads like a fever. Men grab reeds from the shore, from the dunes, from anywhere they grow. and every handful becomes a weapon. The curse has been patient. The curse has been waiting. Now the curse is everywhere, turning every angry hand into an instrument of destruction. Brothers turn on brothers. Fathers face sons across suddenly impassable distances. The old divisions, who supported whom during the war, who insulted whose family, who cheated whom in business deals decades ago, all of it erupts at once. The beach becomes a battlefield without strategy, without sides, without any possibility of victory, just destruction, pure and complete. The scent reaches you before the full horror does. Blood mixing with salt water, with spilled wine, with the smoke from cooking fires that no one is tending anymore. The sound is worse, the grunts of effort, the crack of iron-hard reeds against bone, the wet sounds of bodies meeting sand. You see Satyaki fall, surrounded by men he once called friends. You see Pradyumna, Krishna's own son, brought down by a cousin whose name you don't even know. You see old men who should be watching their grandchildren play, instead locked in combat with warriors half their age. The festival pavilions collapse under the weight of struggling bodies. The cooking fires spread to the silk hangings, adding smoke and flame to the chaos. The wine vessels are trampled, their contents mixing with the blood that's seeping into the white sand. There's no army here, no formation, no strategy, just the Yadavas, all of them, tearing each other apart with weapons that grew from their own shoreline. And Krishna watches. You find him eventually, your eyes drawn to the one still point in all this motion. He's sitting on a flat rock at the edge of the beach, where the sand meets, the grass meets the forest. His posture is relaxed. His face is calm. He's watching his people die. Not with horror, not with grief, not with the desperate urgency of a king who should be stopping this, who could stop this, who once stopped armies with nothing but his presence and his voice. He watches the way you'd watch a fire you started deliberately, the way you'd watch a debt finally being paid. Gandhari's curse is fulfilling itself, and Krishna is its witness. The afternoon wears on, the shadows lengthen. Thirp, sounds of combat grow quieter, not because peace has returned, but because there are fewer people left to fight. Bodies lie scattered across the beach like offerings to some terrible god. The white sand has turned rust-colored in patches. The waves wash up and recede, carrying blood back out to sea, bringing more iron reeds into shore. You see men lying still who were laughing just hours ago. You see faces frozen in expressions of rage, of terror, of bewildered recognition. That final moment when someone realized the person ending their life was someone they'd loved. The Yadava race, the people who built golden Dwaraka, who claimed descent from the moon itself, who produced warriors whose names will echo through the ages, all of them, scattered across a beach like shells after a storm. The sun begins to set. Orange and red light spills across the carnage, making everything look like it's burning, even where it isn't. Krishna stands. He walks through the field of fallen bodies, stepping carefully around men he's known since childhood, around cousins and nephews and sons. His feet leave prints in the blood-stained sand. He doesn't weep. He doesn't cry out. He doesn't fall to his knees and demand answers from the heavens. He accepted this ending 36 years ago, when a grieving mother's words settled into his bones like prophecy. Everything since then has been waiting. Everything since then has been preparation for this single terrible afternoon. The curse is almost complete now. Almost. A few survivors stumble away from the beach. Not many. Enough to carry the story, to tell what happened here, to make sure the world knows how the Yadavas ended. The reeds sway innocently in the evening breeze, as if they hadn't just been instruments of genocide. The waves continue their eternal rhythm, indifferent to the bodies they're washing against. The cooking fires have burned down to embers. Krishna walks toward the forest. Behind him, the beach holds what remains of his kingdom, his people, his life's work. He doesn't look back. There's nothing left to look back at. Somewhere in the gathering darkness, his brother Balarama has already found his own ending. Sitting in meditation beneath a tree, the great serpent that was always his true form finally emerged from his mouth and slithered toward the sea, returning to the cosmic ocean from which all things come. Krishna felt it happen, the way you'd feel your own heart skip a beat, another thread cut, another connection severed. Now he walks alone through a forest that smells of evening flowers and approaching rain. The sounds of the beach fade behind him. The sounds of insects and night birds rise around him. His work is almost finished. Just one more thing left to do. One more debt to pay. The stars emerge overhead, indifferent and eternal. Somewhere in this forest, there's a banyan tree where a god will sit down and wait for an arrow that's been traveling toward him for lifetimes. But that's still to come. For now, there's just the walking, the sound of feet on the forest floor, the smell of jasmine and sandalwood, and something else, something that might be grief, if gods could grieve. The beach at Prabhasa lies silent behind him. The golden city of Dwaraka will soon follow, swallowed by the sea that once cradled it. The age of heroes is ending, and Krishna walks into the darkness alone toward the hunter who doesn't know he's waiting. The forest receives him like an old friend. You're walking beside Krishna now, matching his pace through the gathering twilight. The sounds of the beach, the moans of the wounded, the silence of the fallen grow distant with each step. Ahead, the trees thicken, their branches weaving together overhead like hands clasped in prayer. The ground beneath your feet is soft with decades of fallen leaves, mulched and dark, giving slightly with each step. The smell rises up, rich earth, decaying sweetness, the green breath of things still growing in a world that's ending. Krishna doesn't hurry. There's nowhere to hurry to anymore. His feet are bare. You notice this as you walk beside him, the god who commanded armies, who held the cosmos in his mouth, who danced on the hoods of serpents, walking through an ordinary forest with ordinary dust between his toes. Thorns catch at his yellow silk. He doesn't seem to notice. The evening flowers are opening around you. Night-blooming jasmine, unfurling white petals in the cooling air. Somewhere to your left, a bird calls once, twice, then falls silent. The forest is settling into sleep. But sleep isn't what waits at the end of this path. You want to ask him things. The questions rise up like bubbles from deep water. Why didn't you stop it? Why did you let them destroy themselves? Why are you walking away instead of walking back? But the questions dissolve before they reach your lips. Something about the set of his shoulders, the steadiness of his stride, tells you he's already answered these questions. Answered them years ago, maybe. Answered them before the first Yadava prince picked up the first iron reed. The answers just weren't the ones anyone wanted to hear. A stream crosses the path ahead, shallow and musical. Krishna steps into it without pausing, the water cold around his ankles, and you feel it too. That shock of temperature, the smooth stones beneath your feet, the way the current tugs gently at your calves like a child trying to get your attention. On the other side, the forest changes. The trees grow older here, their trunks wider than temple pillars, their roots spreading across the ground like the fingers of sleeping giants. Banyan trees, mostly. Their aerial roots dropping down from branches to become new trunks, so that each tree is really a forest unto itself. Krishna slows. He's looking for something. You remember suddenly that his brother left his body just hours ago. Balarama, the strong one, the steady one, the one who carried a plow instead of a sword because he preferred to create rather than destroy. He sat down beneath a tree as the last of the Yadavas fell, closed his eyes, and simply stopped. The white serpent that emerged from his mouth was beautiful, vast and luminous, sliding through the grass toward the ocean, returning to the cosmic waters from which all serpents come. The divine serpent Shesha, who holds the world on his 1,000 hoods, going home at last. Krishna felt it happen, the way you'd feel your own reflection disappear from a mirror, the way you'd feel the other half of a conversation fall silent forever. Now he walks alone through a forest that smells of rain coming, and you walk with him, and neither of you speaks. The banyan tree finds him before he finds it. That's how it feels anyway. One moment you're walking through an ordinary forest, and the next you're standing at the edge of a clearing where a single banyan has spread itself across half an acre of ground. Roots dropping from branches, branches spreading from roots, until the tree is its own cathedral, its own world, its own universe of green and shadow. Krishna stops walking. You're close enough to see his face in the dying light, close enough to see something that might be relief, might be recognition, might be the expression of someone who's finally arrived at the place they've been traveling toward their whole life. He moves into the tree's embrace. The aerial roots part for him like curtains, like attendants stepping aside for a king. The ground beneath the canopy is cool and dry, sheltered from both rain and sun. A natural temple, a natural tomb. He sits, not dramatically, not with ceremony, just the way anyone sits when their legs are tired and there's a good spot beneath a tree. He settles his back against the main trunk, draws one foot up to rest on the opposite thigh. The pose of meditation, the pose of waiting, the pose of a god who has finished his work. You're inside his stillness now, breathing when he breathes, feeling the rough bark against your back, the cool earth beneath you, the weight of the day settling into your bones like water into sand. The forest grows dark around him, around you. The birds have stopped calling. The insects are beginning their evening chorus, that rhythmic pulse of sound that turns tropical nights into music. Somewhere far away, a jackal calls to its mate. Somewhere closer, a mongoose rustles through the underbrush, hunting for its dinner. Life goes on, even at the end of an age. You want to know what he's thinking. You want to know if gods feel fear or regret or loneliness. You want to know if he's replaying the day, the wine, the arguments, the iron reeds, the brothers falling, the beach turning red and then silent. But his face gives nothing away. His eyes are closed or maybe open. It's hard to tell in the darkness. His breath is steady and slow. If there's grief in him, it's buried so deep that even you, pressed against his consciousness like a shadow, can't find it. Maybe gods don't grieve the way we do. Maybe they see endings as we see seasons, inevitable, necessary, part of a cycle too vast to mourn. Or maybe he's simply tired, tired in a way that goes beyond bodies, beyond lifetimes, beyond the very concept of rest. The moon rises. You feel it before you see it. A shift in the quality of darkness, a silvering at the edges of things. The banyan leaves catch the light and hold it, turning the clearing into a bowl of shadows and pale fire. Krishna's skin looks almost blue in this light, the dark blue of deep water, the dark blue of the sky just before stars appear, the dark blue that mothers see when they look at their sleeping children and think of the god who once stole butter from their great-great-grandmother's kitchens, the butter thief, the flute player, the charioteer, the friend, all of these and none of these, sitting beneath a tree in a forest that smells of night flowers and approaching rain. Somewhere in the darkness, a hunter is moving through the trees. His name is Jara, though neither of you knows this yet. He's been tracking a deer since the afternoon, following bent grass and scattered droppings through miles of forest. His stomach is empty. His family is waiting. His arrow is nocked and ready. He doesn't know that the deer he's tracking doesn't exist. He doesn't know that his arrow has been traveling toward this clearing for lifetimes, gathering momentum through incarnation after incarnation, waiting for this night, this forest, this god sitting alone beneath a banyan tree. All he knows is that he's hungry and tired, and somewhere ahead, there's movement in the shadows. You feel the moment approaching, the way you'd feel a storm building on the horizon, or a wave gathering itself before it breaks. Something is coming, something that will end one age and begin another. But not yet. For now, there's just the sitting, the breathing, the moon rising higher through the banyan leaves, the smell of jasmine and earth and something else, something that might be the scent of endings if endings had a scent. Krishna's foot rests on his thigh, dark skin against dark skin, the soul turned upward toward the sky, toward the arrow that's still moving through the forest, toward the hunter who doesn't know he's hunting a god. The night deepens, the stars wheel overhead, the forest holds its breath, and somewhere in the darkness, Jara draws closer, following tracks that were never there, hunting prey that was always waiting for him. The hunter moves through twilight like a shadow through water. You're with him now, inside his skin, behind his eyes, feeling the ache in his calves from hours of walking, the hollow complaint of his stomach, the rough grip of the bow in his calloused hand. The forest around you is all blue shadow and golden slant light, the last rays of sun catching dust motes and spider silk, turning everything into something between waking and dreaming. Chara doesn't think in words, not anymore. He's been hunting too long today, and hunger has stripped away everything except the hunt itself. His eyes move without his permission, scanning the undergrowth, reading the language of bent grass and scattered leaves. His ears strain for the snap of a twig, the rustle of a body moving through brush. His nose catches the green smell of crushed ferns, the distant sweetness of night-blooming jasmine, the faint musk of something warm-blooded nearby. Something is close. He can feel it. The forest at this hour is a place between worlds. Not quite day, Not quite night. The birds have gone quiet, settling into their roosts. The night creatures haven't yet emerged. In this suspended moment, sound travels strangely. A footfall here might echo from somewhere else entirely, and silence seems to pool in the hollows like standing water. You feel the stillness pressing against your skin. The air is thick with it, heavy with the scent of earth and decomposing leaves and something else. Something you can't name. Something that makes the hair on your arms rise without reason. Jara doesn't notice. He's too focused on the tracks. They're strange tracks, if he stopped to think about it. Appearing and disappearing without pattern, leading deeper into the forest than any sensible deer would go at this hour. But hunger doesn't allow for sensible questions. Hunger says, follow. Hunger says, there's meat ahead, and your children are waiting, and your wife's face grows thinner every week, so he follows. The banyan tree appears gradually, the way dreams emerge from sleep. First, just a thickening of shadow, then the suggestion of roots, massive and gnarled, descending from branches like frozen waterfalls. Then the trunk itself, so wide that 10 men couldn't circle it with linked arms, so old that it might have been standing when the gods first walked the earth. Jara circles wide, moving downwind by instinct. The light is almost gone now, just a faint glow in the western sky, and he has to rely more on sound and smell than sight. His arrow is nocked, his string is half drawn, his breathing has slowed to almost nothing. There, through a gap in the leaves, a flash of dark skin, something moving. His mind says, deer. His body says, shoot. The arrow leaves the bow before he can think again. You follow it through the air. Time stretches like honey, like the moment before waking, like the pause between one heartbeat and the next. The arrow moves through space that suddenly seems thick and resistant, as if the world itself is trying to slow what's happening. The fletching spins. The shaft catches the last light. The iron head gleams with a darkness that seems older than iron, older than hunting, older than the forest itself. And you realize, with a certainty that settles into your bones, that this arrow has been flying for much longer than the few seconds since it left the bow. This arrow has been flying for lifetimes, through incarnation after incarnation, through the ages of the world, gathering momentum, gathering purpose, gathering the weight of a debt that was incurred before Yara was born, before his grandfather was born, before the forest was planted or the mountains were raised. In another age, in another story, there was a monkey king named Vali. He was powerful, proud, undefeatable in single combat, and a prince named Rama, who was also someone else, who was also the one sitting beneath this banyan tree, killed him with an arrow from hiding, not in fair combat, not face to face. From the shadows, while Vali fought his brother, an arrow found his heart. Vali died with a question on his lips. Why like this? Why not face me like a warrior? And the prince, who was also a god, who was also the butter thief, who grew up to move armies like chess pieces, said, because this is how it had to be, because some debts require payment in the same coin they were borrowed. The arrow flies on. It finds the sole of his foot, the one spot, the only spot, the place where the cosmic serpent's venom couldn't reach when the infant god was anointed with protection, the place where the butter thief's mother held him while she blessed him, her fingers covering that small patch of skin, leaving it mortal in a body that was otherwise divine. The arrow sinks deep. The dark skin parts around iron. The god beneath the banyan tree doesn't cry out. He smiles. You're with Jara as he pushes through the brush, heart pounding with the triumph of a successful shot. The light is almost gone, but he can see the shape ahead, not moving, not fleeing, just sitting there beneath that massive tree. Strange, he thinks. Deer don't sit. Deer don't stay still when they're wounded. The leaves part, the shadows resolve into form, and Jara's world ends. It's not a deer. It was never a deer. It's a man, beautiful and terrible, dark-skinned and peaceful, sitting in perfect stillness with an arrow buried in his foot. Blood pools on the forest floor, black in the twilight, but the man's face shows no pain. Only that smile, that knowing, gentle, devastating smile. The bow falls from Jara's hands. His legs give way beneath him. The forest floor rises to meet his knees, and he doesn't feel the impact, doesn't feel anything except the vast, crushing weight of what he's done. He's killed a man, not a deer, a man. And not just any man. There's something in that face, something in those eyes that speaks of ages and empires and truths too large for a hunter's mind to hold. The smell of blood mingles with jasmine. Somewhere, an owl calls its first note of the evening. The stars are appearing now, one by one, as if the sky is slowly opening its eyes to witness what's happened here. Jara tries to speak, but words won't come. His throat has closed around something that might be terror, might be grief, might be the dawning recognition that he's stumbled into a story much larger than his own. His hands shake. His vision blurs with tears he doesn't remember starting. The man beneath the tree, the god beneath the tree. Though Jara doesn't know this yet, not really, not in words, watches him with infinite patience. The way a parent watches a child who's broken something precious. The way the ocean watches the shore. The way time watches everything. You feel the weight of the moment pressing down on both of them. The hunter and the hunted, though which is which has become unclear. The one who shot and the one who was always going to be shot. The debt collector and the debt that was owed. The forest has gone completely silent. Even the wind has stopped. Even the insects have ceased their evening chorus. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Blood continues to pool beneath the banyan tree. Dark blood, God's blood, the same blood that ran through the veins of a butter-stealing child in Vrindavan, a charioteer at Kurukshetra, a king who built a golden city on the sea. The same blood that will soon stop flowing, will soon grow cold, will soon return to the earth from which all things come and to which all things return. But not yet. For now, there's just this moment, this hunter kneeling in the dirt, this god smiling through his wound, this arrow that has finally, after lifetimes of flying, found its mark. Jara's lips move. He's trying to beg forgiveness, trying to explain, trying to undo what can't be undone. But the words that come out aren't words at all, just sounds, just the raw noise of a man confronting something too large for language. The god's smile doesn't waver. If anything, it deepens. There's no anger in those eyes, no accusation, only a vast, peaceful acceptance that seems to say, this was always coming. This was always meant to be. And you, poor hunter, hungry father, tracker of phantom deer, you were always the one who was going to deliver it. The night settles around them like a blanket. The stars wheel overhead. The blood pools wider. And somewhere in the distance, in a city that will soon sink beneath the waves, in a kingdom that has already torn itself apart. The last echoes of an age are fading into silence. The sound that escapes Jara's throat isn't human. It's the noise an animal makes when caught in a trap, when it realizes escape is impossible, when the only thing left is the waiting. He's on his knees in the dirt, hands pressed against the wound, as if he could push the blood back in, as if he could rewind time, as if he could unmake the arrow's flight through sheer desperate wanting. The blood is warm against his fingers, warmer than any deer's blood has ever been. It pulses with something he can't name, something that makes his skin tingle and his heart race with a terror that goes deeper than fear of punishment. You're kneeling beside him now, close enough to smell the iron tang of blood mixing with the evening jasmine, close enough to see the god's face, calm as still water, watching the hunter fall apart. Jara's words finally come, tumbling over each other like stones in a river. He's sorry, so sorry. He didn't know. He couldn't have known. He was just hunting, just trying to feed his children, just doing what hunters do. He begs for death, quick, merciful, anything rather than living with this weight. He begs for a curse. Let the gods strike him down. Let the earth swallow him. Let his name be forgotten by history. He begs for forgiveness, which he's certain will never come. The forest listens. The birds have gone silent. Even the insects have stopped their evening song, as if the whole world is leaning in to hear what happens next. And then Krishna laughs, not a bitter laugh, not the laugh of a dying man made cruel by pain. It's the laugh of someone who has just heard a joke so perfect, so complete, that all the suffering in the world can't diminish its beauty. The sound rises through the banyan tree, rustles the heart-shaped leaves, drifts up toward stars that are just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Jara stops babbling. The laugh has done what his guilt could not. It shocked him into silence. He stares at the god with the arrow in his foot, the god who is laughing at his own death, and for a moment, he's certain he's gone mad. Perhaps the twilight deceived him. Perhaps this is all a fever dream brought on by hunger and exhaustion. But the blood on his hands is real. The warmth fading from the god's skin is real. And the voice that now speaks to him, gentle, unhurried, with all the time in the world, even as time runs out, that's real too. Krishna tells him to stop. Stop weeping. Stop begging. Stop trying to carry a weight that was never his to bear. The hunter's tears continue to fall, but his body stills. Something in that voice commands obedience, even from grief. Krishna explains, and his words paint pictures in the darkening air. He speaks of another forest, another age, another arrow that flew from hiding and found its mark. He speaks of a monkey king named Valley, powerful beyond measure, who was struck down by an arrow while fighting his brother, struck down by an arrow shot from behind a tree, struck down by an arrow that came from the bow of a prince named Rama, who was, in ways that language struggles to capture, the same consciousness now bleeding beneath this banyan tree. You feel the weight of this settling over you like a heavy blanket. The smell of the forest, loam and flowers and cooling earth, grounds you as the story unfolds. Vali died with a question on his lips. Krishna continues, "Why? Why shoot from hiding? Why not fight fairly?" The prince had answered, had explained the dharma of kings and the crimes of the monkey king, but the question had lingered. The arrow had created a debt, and debts across lifetimes must be repaid. Jara's eyes widen. He's beginning to understand, though understanding brings its own kind of vertigo. Krishna's voice remains warm, almost affectionate. He tells the hunter that in his previous life, he was Vali. The fierce monkey king, brought low by a hidden arrow, had been reborn as this simple man, a hunter, a father, a tracker of deer through twilight forests. And the arrow that ended Vali's life had been waiting, patient, inevitable, for this exact moment to be returned. The god smiles, and there's something almost playful in it. He tells Jara that now they're even. The cosmic accounting is complete. No curse will fall. No punishment awaits. The hunter has done nothing wrong. He's simply completed a transaction that began ages ago in a forest, much like this one, or under stars, much like these. You can feel the shift in the air. The terror that gripped Jara begins to loosen its hold. Not because the situation has changed. The god is still dying. The blood is still pooling. The arrow still protrudes from that vulnerable foot. But because the meaning has transformed. This isn't murder. This isn't an accident. This is a resolution. The night has fully arrived now. The last light has faded from the sky, leaving only starlight and the faint glow that seems to emanate from Krishna's skin. Dimmer now, but still present. The banyan tree's aerial roots hang like curtains around them, creating a chamber of leaves and shadows. Jara's breathing slows. The hunter, who moments ago was begging for death, now sits back on his heels, hands still stained with divine blood, face wet with tears that have begun to dry. He's looking at the god with something new in his eyes. Not fear, not guilt, something closer to wonder. Krishna tells him to go home. His children are waiting. His wife is worried. The deer he was hunting, the real deer, the one that escaped, will be there tomorrow. Life continues, even when gods die, especially when gods die. The hunter doesn't move, can't move, not yet. So Krishna gives him something else, a blessing, spoken softly, barely louder than the night breeze moving through the leaves. He tells Jara that he will be remembered, not as a killer, but as an instrument. The man who closed the circle, the hunter who freed the god from his mortal form. There's a pause. The forest holds its breath. Then Krishna adds, with that same gentle humor, that Jara should probably find a different hunting ground after this. The deer in this particular forest might be a bit skittish for a while. Jara almost laughs. Almost. The sound catches in his throat, somewhere between a sob and a chuckle. And what emerges is something purely human. The noise of a man who has touched the infinite and survived, changed, but not destroyed. He bows, forehead to the earth, hands pressed flat against the cool soil, the full prostration of absolute surrender. The dirt smells of rain that fell days ago, of roots pushing through darkness, of the patient work of worms and beetles breaking down what was into what will be. When he rises, Krishna's eyes are closed. The god's chest still moves, barely, a flutter more than a breath, but the smile remains, fixed now, permanent, an expression that will stay on those features long after the life behind them has departed. Jara stands, his legs shake, but they hold him. He looks at the god one last time, this impossible being who chose to die in a forest, killed by accident, forgiving his killer with his final words. Then he turns and walks away, leaving bloody footprints on the forest floor that the morning dew will wash clean. The night deepens around the banyan tree. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. The god's blood has stopped flowing now. There's not much left to flow, and the wound in his foot has taken on a strange stillness, as if it too knows that its work is done. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. The sound is lonely and beautiful, a hunter's cry in the darkness. And beneath the banyan tree, the god who taught the world about duty and love, and the strange mathematics of karma, breathes out one last time. The breath doesn't come back in. The chest stills. The glow that surrounded him flickers once, twice, then fades into the ordinary darkness of an ordinary night. The forest exhales. The conversation is over. The debt is paid. And the age of heroes ends not with thunder or glory, but with a hunter's footsteps fading into the night, carrying a blessing he'll spend the rest of his life trying to understand. And yet, the forest keeps its secret for 3 days. 3 days while the god's body rests beneath the banyan tree, untouched by scavengers, unmarked by decay. The birds avoid that clearing. The insects find other paths. Even the wind seems to bend around the spot where Krishna fell, as if nature itself hasn't decided whether to mourn or simply wait. 3 days while Arjuna rides, he doesn't know yet. Not really. He received Daruka's message in Hastinapura. The Yadavas have fallen. Dwaraka is chaos. Come quickly. But the full weight of it hasn't landed. He rides through the night, through the dawn, through another night, his mind refusing to complete the thought that keeps starting in his chest. Krishna is no. He pushes the horse harder. You're with him on that road. You feel the rhythm of hooves on packed earth, smell the dust rising in clouds behind you, taste the copper of exhaustion at the back of your throat. The landscape blurs, villages, fields, forests, all smearing together into a single desperate forward motion. Arjuna hasn't slept, hasn't eaten. His eyes burn and his hands ache on the reins. But stopping feels impossible. Stopping would mean arriving. Arriving would mean knowing. He reaches Dwaraka first. The golden city is empty, not destroyed. That will come later when the sea claims it, but hollow. The streets that once rang with commerce and laughter now echo only with his horse's hooves. Doors hang open. Food rots on tables. In one courtyard, he finds a child's toy abandoned in the dust, a wooden flute painted blue. He doesn't pick it up. The survivors tell him what they know. They speak of the beach at Prabhasa, of wine and old grudges, of reeds that became weapons. They speak of Balarama sitting beneath a tree and simply leaving, a white serpent emerging from his mouth, sliding toward the ocean, disappearing beneath the waves. They speak of Krishna walking alone into the forest. They don't know about the hunter. They don't know about the arrow. They only know that someone must find him. Arjuna leaves before they finish speaking. The forest is thick this time of year, the monsoon rains having fed every vine and branch into a green tangle. You push through it beside him, feeling the wet leaves slap against your arms, smelling the rich decay of the forest floor, hearing your own breath loud in your ears. Arjuna calls Krishna's name, once, twice. The forest swallows the sound. He finds the clearing as the sun begins to set. The light is golden and horizontal, cutting through the trees. It's unnaturally quiet here. No birds, no wind, just the heavy silence of a place that is waiting to be found. The banyan tree spreads its canopy like a temple roof, its aerial roots hanging like curtains around the sacred space beneath. And there, on the exposed root, in the pose of a man simply resting, is what remains. Arjuna's knees give out. before he reaches the body. He crawls the last few feet. His hands shake as they reach for Krishna's face, touching the cold cheek, the closed eyes, the smile that somehow remains, even now. The skin is cool. The stillness is absolute. The wound in the foot has long since stopped bleeding, a small dark mark that seems too insignificant to have ended a god. The sound Arjuna makes isn't weeping. It's something older than that, something that doesn't have a name because it wasn't meant to be survived. This is the man who held Arjuna's reins at Kurukshetra, who showed him the universe folded into a single cosmic form, who promised again and again that everything would work out, that Dharma would triumph, that the good would prevail. This is the friend who teased him about his archery, who ate with him on campaign, who once fell asleep on his shoulder during a particularly boring court session and denied it afterward. This is cold flesh now. This is memory. Arjuna stays in that clearing through the night. He doesn't move, doesn't speak. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that witnessed Krishna's last conversation with the hunter, and Arjuna watches them without seeing. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls, the same owl perhaps that marked the god's final breath. Dawn comes grey and reluctant. The cremation takes place on the beach at Prabhasa, not far from where the Yadavas fell. The pyre is built of sandalwood, the finest they can find in a city with no one left to guard its treasures. The logs are stacked with care, with reverence, with hands that tremble. You're standing at the edge of that gathering. You smell the sandalwood beginning to catch, sweet and sharp. You hear the mantras rising from the priest's lips, ancient words meant to guide a soul to its next destination. You feel the heat building as the flames take hold, pressing against your face like a living thing. But what soul? What destination? The fire consumes what was mortal. The smoke rises in a column toward the sky, carrying with it the scent of sandalwood and something else, something that smells like rain on hot stone, like butter melting in a clay pot, like the flowers that grew wild on the banks of the Yamuna. Arjuna watches the flames. His face is empty now. The grief has burned through him and left something else behind, a kind of hollow clarity. He suddenly understands that everything they built is ending, the age of heroes, the time of miracles, the world where gods walked among men and taught them how to live. All of it. Ash. Across India, something is shifting. In a village near Mathura, an old woman wakes from a dream she can't quite remember. There was a boy in it, a dark-skinned boy with butter on his fingers and mischief in his eyes. She'd been dreaming of him for 60 years, ever since she was a child herself. But this morning, when she reaches for the dream, it slides away like water through her fingers. The boy's face is blurring. His laughter is fading. By noon, she won't remember the dream at all. In a forest near Vrindavan, a cowherd girl, old now, bent with years, stops suddenly in her work. Something is wrong. Something is missing. She looks toward the river where she once danced, where the flute music once called her through the moonlit trees, and she feels a cold wind blow through the hollow place in her chest. The music has stopped. She didn't notice when it stopped, but it's gone now. Gone. In temple after temple, the butter offerings sit untouched. The priests don't understand. The butter always disappeared before. Everyone knew the blue god was hungry. Everyone knew he came in the night to steal what was freely given. But now the butter remains. Now the offerings grow rancid. Now the temples feel empty in a way that has nothing to do with the number of people in them. The dreams are fading, not all at once, not everywhere, but slowly, steadily, like a tide going out. The presence that once filled the world is withdrawing. The miracles become stories. The stories become legends. The legends become myths that people tell without quite believing. The Kali Yuga has begun. You feel it settling over the world like a thin grey film. Nothing looks different. The sun still rises, the rivers still flow, the seasons still turn. But something essential has departed. Something that made the impossible feel possible, that made the divine feel close enough to touch. Arjuna feels it too. He stands before the dying embers of the pyre, and he knows that his own time is ending. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. The Pandavas have ruled for 36 years, and suddenly those years feel like borrowed time, like a guest who stayed too long at a feast that ended hours ago. He gathers the ashes, places them in an urn of gold, carries them to the sea. The waves receive what remains of the god who once danced on the ocean's surface, who once lifted a mountain to shelter his people from rain, who once showed a warrior the entire universe compressed into a single blazing moment. The waves don't care. The waves keep coming, indifferent, eternal. Arjuna stands at the water's edge until the sun sets. The urn is empty now. The ashes have scattered. The tide has carried them to wherever tides carry the remains of gods. Behind him, the remnants of Dwaraka wait. Women and children and old men, the survivors of a massacre, looking to him for guidance he doesn't have. He'll lead them to Hastinapura. He'll try to protect them on the road. He'll fail. His strength is fading. His weapons are losing their power. The age that made him a hero is ending. But that's tomorrow's grief. Tonight, he stands at the ocean's edge, and he lets himself remember. The chariot at Kurukshetra, the cosmic vision, the smile that promised everything would be all right. The tide comes in, the stars emerge, the night deepens, and somewhere in the gathering darkness, a flute falls silent that will never play again. So after all of that, the curse of a grieving mother, the fall of a golden city, the arrow in the twilight, and the smoke rising from a sandalwood pyre, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? It feels heavy, doesn't it, to watch a god die? We aren't used to stories where the divine ends up mortal. We aren't used to heroes who save the world only to watch their own families destroy themselves in a drunken brawl on a beach. It feels like a tragedy. It feels like something went wrong. But the rishis, the sages who preserved this story for thousands of years, wanted you to understand that nothing went wrong. This wasn't a mistake. This was the point. The story of Krishna's death is perhaps the most profound lesson in the entire Mahabharata because it deals with the one thing we all struggle to accept: endings. Think about the curse Gandhari cast. For 36 years, we might have looked at her as a villain, a bitter, angry mother lashing out at God. But the storytellers wanted you to see something deeper. Krishna accepted her curse with a smile. He said, "I know. It is already done." This teaches us the first and hardest lesson about karma. We often think of karma as punishment. You do bad, you get bad. But in the Mahabharata, karma is more like physics. It's a law of balance. It's a debt that must be paid. Krishna accepted the curse because he understood that even he wasn't above the laws of the universe he maintained. He had participated in the war. He had facilitated the destruction. Even though it was for the sake of Dharma, for righteousness, the bill still had to be paid. The storytellers wanted to show you that there are no exemptions from consequence. If God Himself bows His head to the laws of cause and effect, then maybe we can find some peace in accepting our own. And then there's the hunter, Jara. This is where the story becomes truly beautiful and truly strange. Why did the greatest avatar of Vishnu die by a mistake? Why a stray arrow? Why not a glorious battle against a demon king? The sages were weaving a thread here that stretches back lifetimes. They wanted you to remember the story of Rama and Vali from the Ramayana. In a previous life, as Prince Rama, the divine soul, had shot the Monkey King Vali from hiding, while Vali was distracted fighting his brother. It was a strategic move, a necessary move for the war, but it was ethically complicated. Vali died asking, why? And lifetimes later, the wheel turned. Vali was reborn as Jara the hunter. Rama was reborn as Krishna. And the arrow that was shot from hiding found its mark. The debt was settled. This isn't about tit-for-tat vengeance. It's about completion. The storytellers wanted you to understand that the universe never forgets. It holds everything in balance. When Krishna forgave Jara under that banyan tree, he wasn't just being kind. He was acknowledging that the circle was finally closed. He was showing us that even death can be a form of healing, a way of setting things right that have been wrong for ages. But there's a warning here too, a quiet, terrifying warning in the story of Dwaraka. The Golden City didn't fall to an invading army. It wasn't destroyed by monsters. It was destroyed by its own people, by boredom, by arrogance, by a prank that went too far. The Yadavas had everything. They lived in paradise, ruled by God Himself. And they got comfortable. They forgot that being good isn't a permanent state. It's a daily practice. They stopped respecting the sages. They stopped protecting the weak. They let their prosperity make them cruel. The storytellers left us this devastating image of the iron reeds growing on the beach to tell us something about societies and about our own souls. The things that destroy us usually come from inside. The curses we face are often just the fruit of our own small, daily neglects ripening over time. Dwaraka forgot its dharma, and so it was reclaimed by the ocean. It's a reminder that nothing, no wealth, no power, not even the presence of the divine, can save us if we lose our internal compass. And finally, there is the lesson of the Kali Yuga. The moment Krishna left, the world changed. Arjuna, the greatest warrior of his age, suddenly couldn't string his bow. His strength failed him. The magic leaked out of the world. The ancient seers called this the start of the Kali Yuga, the age of iron, the age we live in now, an age where truth stands on one leg, where dharma is difficult, where the gods seem silent. It sounds bleak, but there is a hidden comfort in it. By telling this story, the sages were validating our experience. They were saying, we know the world feels harder now. We know it feels like the magic is gone. We know it feels like you're fighting alone. They gave us the story of Krishna's departure so we wouldn't feel abandoned. They wanted us to know that the silence we hear isn't because God is dead, but because the nature of the game has changed. In this age, we don't get to see the cosmic form on the battlefield. We don't get to watch butter thieves perform miracles in the village square. In this age, we have to find the divine in the quiet, in the memory, in the stories. That is the ultimate meaning of Krishna's death. He showed us how to let go, He, the owner of the universe, owned nothing at the end. He sat on the earth alone and breathed his last breath into the night air, perfectly at peace. He wanted to show us that death isn't a failure. It's just the time when the actor takes off the costume. The sorrow we feel, the sorrow Arjuna felt, the sorrow the gopis felt, is real. The storytellers honor that grief. They don't tell us not to cry, but they also want us to see the smile on Krishna's face in that final moment. That smile says, "It's okay. The play is over. The work is done. You don't have to worry about the script anymore." It's a smile of absolute, terrifying, beautiful freedom. And it's the gift he left behind for us, buried under the banyan tree, waiting for anyone brave enough to sit in the silence and find it. Rest now. The story is told. The god is sleeping. So should you. But before you drift, let yourself wander through what remains. Not the grief, not the endings, just the quiet places where something still lingers. There's a temple in Puri on the eastern coast, where the Bay of Bengal crashes against ancient stone. You're standing in the courtyard at dawn, and the air smells of marigolds and sandalwood and something sweeter underneath. Butter, fresh butter, churned that morning, is shaped into small golden balls that the priests carry on silver trays toward the inner sanctum. They've been doing this for centuries, every morning, without fail, offering butter to a god who never stopped being hungry. The statue inside is ancient, worn smooth by generations of hands and prayers and tears. The face is barely visible now, the features softened by time. But the priests don't need to see the face. They know who lives there. The boy who stole butter from his mother's kitchen. The child who ate dirt and showed the universe in his mouth. The god who chose to be small so that love could find him. The butter disappears by evening. The priests say he eats it. Skeptics say it melts in the coastal heat. Does it matter? Someone is still feeding him. Someone still remembers that he was hungry once. You drift westward now across the body of India to a forest in Gujarat where the banyan trees grow so thick that noon looks like twilight. The air here is heavy, green, alive with the sound of insects and distant water. This is hunting country. It has been for thousands of years. The hunters who move through these trees carry their bows with a strange reverence. Before they release an arrow, they whisper something, an apology, a prayer. They don't know exactly why. Their fathers did it, and their fathers before them. Something happened here once. A hunter, an arrow, a mistake that turned out to be fate. The story has blurred over the centuries, but the ritual remains. Every arrow carries a whisper of regret. Every kill is preceded by a moment of hesitation. Just in case. Just in case what you're aiming at isn't what you think it is. Just in case the deer in the shadows is something more. The forest keeps its secrets. The banyan roots dig deeper into the soil that might have held divine blood. The twilight stretches on. Somewhere else now. A village that could be anywhere in India, in any century, in any moment, where a mother sits beside her child's sleeping mat and tells the old stories. The child is fighting sleep. Children always fight sleep. There's too much world to see, too many questions unanswered, too much darkness waiting in the corners of the room. The mother's voice is soft. She tells the child about a blue god who loved butter and music and mischief, who danced with village girls in the moonlight, who lifted a mountain on his finger to shelter his people from the rain. The child asks where he went. Children always ask where things go. The mother smooths the hair back from the child's forehead. Her hand smells of cooking spices and jasmine oil. She says the blue god isn't gone. He's just sleeping, like you should be sleeping. And if you're very quiet, very still, if you let your breath slow down and your eyes close and your mind drift, you can hear his flute. The child listens, hears nothing but the night sounds, the distant temple bells, a dog barking somewhere, the wind in the mango trees. But underneath all of that, in the spaces between heartbeats, there's something else. A melody that might be a memory, a sweetness that might be a dream, a presence that feels like being loved by someone who knows everything about you and chose you anyway. The child's eyes grow heavy. The mother keeps talking, but the words have become rhythm now, not meaning. The story has done its work. This is what remains. Not the war, not the curses, not the iron maces or the burning pyres or the grief that swallowed kingdoms whole. Just this, a temple where butter still disappears, a forest where hunters still whisper, a mother's voice in the darkness, promising that the god isn't gone. He's just somewhere you can't see yet. The night holds all of it, the stories and the silences, the endings and the echoes. The god who chose to be mortal because he wanted to know what it felt like to be loved by people who could lose him. He knew how it would end. He always knew the arrow was written into the story before the story began. But he came anyway, stole the butter anyway, played the flute anyway, loved the people who would fail him and grieve him and forget him and remember him again. That's the part that matters, not the dying, the coming, the choosing to be here at all. Your breath is slowing now. The images are softening at the edges. The temple bells are fading into the sound of your own pulse. The forest is becoming the darkness behind your eyes. The mother's voice is becoming the quiet inside your own mind. Let it happen. Let the story settle into the place where stories go when they're finished being told. Somewhere deep, somewhere safe, somewhere that smells of butter and jasmine and the first rain of monsoon season. The god is sleeping. The night is kind. The world is still turning, carrying its cargo of grief and grace. But you don't have to carry any of it right now. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to drift. You're allowed to let the flute music find you in the space between waking and sleep, in the place where everything that was lost is still playing, still dancing, still stealing butter from the kitchen of the universe. The silence deepens. The breath slows. The night wraps around you like a mother's arms, like a story that never really ends, like the sound of a flute fading into the distance, getting softer, sweeter, closer to silence. And then, just this